Magic Find. The only thing that matters when you send in a rare drop in chat. Nothing beats the satisfaction of your hard-earned coins you spent on a Magic Find setup being reaccumulated chimera by chimera with each drop message showing you astronomical amounts of Magic Find. Besides maybe a jet too hot. Oh wait, that meme is already dead. Anyway, I like Magic Find. In fact, I spent more money on a helmet that gives plus 5% of it than probably most people's net worth. And they just announced a Magic Find revamp. Great! This surely means that the Clover helmet is finally gonna become better than the Crown of Avarice again, right? And they most certainly won't screw me over the billions of coins I've spent on other sources of Magic Find, right? No, they actually pretty much did the exact opposite. In this video, I'm gonna go over some of the proposed changes in the design thread for the Magic Find revamp and put into perspective how this is an absolutely atrocious update. As always, this video took a lot of effort to make, and I'd appreciate if you guys would consider leaving a like or even subscribing. But now, let's cut straight to the chase. Before all else, just so we're all on the same page, I'll quickly go over what they even proposed in the first place before actually criticizing it. They start the post off by claiming that optimizing your Magic Find is an unintuitive process that is unhealthy game design wise and disrupts the overall gameplay flow. They also claim that the alleged inflation of Magic Find is the main reason why all of the base drop rates are set so low. So, firstly, they want to increase the base drop chances of Magic Find affected drops all across Skyblock. This is due to their recent observation they made during Aura, how much more enjoyable the game is if the drops are more common. Going hand in hand with the first change, they want to reduce the amount of Magic Find attainable in the game to balance out the higher drop rates. Furthermore, they want to remove all need for swapping to specific Magic Find gear. They justify this change by explaining how less swapping leads to more efficient grinding, while also eliminating the alleged issue that players feel like they're missing out on rare drops or using gear intended for certain content in the game. Lastly, they wish to make Magic Find less complicated. To accomplish this, they want to move Magic Find from active sources, such as pets, armor, reforges, etc., to passive sources, such as skyblock levels, attributes, and the like. They also intend to rework looting to not buff the base drop rates anymore, but instead give a flat amount of Magic Find. Compensate Magic Find should work on every drop, not just those under 5% drop rate, with a similar functionality to something like Mining Fortune, where if you have a drop chance of over 100%, the overflow drop chance gets converted to a chance of dropping an additional item. Then they showed how drop rates and Magic Find sources could look like post-revamp. This is mostly just a lot of boring numbers, but long story short, most of the drop rates would go up overall, while also making the difference in drop rates between earlier game players and later game players less steep. They also mentioned how with the current Magic Find system, you are item locked to certain pets, armor and so on to achieve high Magic Find, whereas with the proposed rework, you'd just have the Magic Find at all times regardless of what you do. They also showed their proposal of unconditional Magic Find sources, conditional Magic Find sources, as well as the Magic Find sources they are intending to remove. Now, let's actually get to what exactly makes this proposed update an absolute catastrophe. I'd like to start off by quickly touching on my main 2 points of concern. Firstly, I don't think it's necessarily balanced that an early game player should have the same drop rates as a late or end game player. Sure, they made the point that end game players still have a massive advantage in form of being able to kill more mobs in the same amount of time, slay the bosses quicker and whatnot. But the thing is, at some point, there's a soft cutoff point where you can't get much faster. Like, the difference between a mid-game player and an end-game player Enderman Slayer is at most 2 to 3 seconds per boss, so volume wise they're rolling for the same drops effectively just as often per hour. So the main thing that makes up the difference between their rates in that case is the magic find. And if even that is close enough for the rates to not vary too much based off of that, then at that point there'd be no incentive to grind in order to improve your rates. Secondly, the relation between the so-called magic find inflation and the low base drop rates is balanced in a way where, while the drops themselves are quite rare, magic find and by extension looting can increase their rates up to even the tenfold in certain cases. So yeah, while a shimmering wool looking at it in a vacuum seems ridiculously rare with a 1 in 500 drop rate, 400 magic find and looting 5, which is very reasonable to attain by the way, pushes the odds to just under 1 in 57. If we assume the max magic find post revamp to land around 250 for Diana, Shimmering Wool would have to be raised to a drop chance of something like 0.5%, but knowing the Hypixel balancing theme, they'll probably make it even more common than that, in turn screwing up the economy even more than it already is. One of the main wishes with this update is to remove the need for swapping gear to maximize your magic find in order to reduce downtime and apparently make it more intuitive. Unpopular opinion, but I think they are removing way too many swaps at this point. It's kinda making the game lose its identity. Removing swaps just leads to less engaging gameplay, turning the game into even more of a typical MMORPG grindfest, while also lowering the already not all too high skill ceiling. Like, at this point you may as well remove stuff like debuffing, because swapping between multiple weapons is downtime and ruins the flow of combat because you have to take a break from actually damaging a boss, to shoot it with a last breath, which disrupts the flow of gameplay just as much as a magic find swap, one could argue. Like, I think it's already balanced quite well as is. The Diana event is a great example here. You can either choose to shred mobs with crimson armor and lose a bit of magic find on the smaller mobs, but be a decent bit faster at killing them, or you can wear 3/4 Mythos armor with a Crown of Avarice and get a boatload of magic find, but in return kill them slightly slower. Now, it might not be the best example because the drops these mobs drop are worth quite a negligible amount of the total profit you make during Diana, but you get the point. The point is, you have to sacrifice some other stat in order to meaningfully increase your magic find. Besides, swapping to your magic find setup takes like practically no meaningful amount of time anyways. It's at most 2 to 3 seconds in total to press your /wardrobe keybind and equip your other armor set and swap back after. And for other sources like Golden Dragon, you have pet rules to equip it when your Slayer boss spawns, you kill your Diana mob, etc. So it's not even downtime. But wait, what's this? They want to give the Hound pet and Tarantula pet magic find towards Wolf Slayer and Spider Slayer respectively? Now yeah, those two pets do see use during their respective slayers, due to the extra combat XP they provide for the slayer mobs type, but for the actual boss, you just use auto pet to swap to another pet whenever it spawns, like the Golden Dragon. So this means, while before you were gaining both the benefit of best in slot DPS and best in slot magic find from the Golden Dragon, you are now pet locked into the Tarantula or Hound pet for max magic find. Furthermore, there's no mention of Mythos armor getting its magic find taken away, and Crown of Avarice only suffers a mild nerf in terms of magic find, so there's still the dilemma of picking between Crimson armor and Mythos armor for the Diana event. These 2 points contradict their own wish of not item locking people to specific pets, armor and so on to achieve max magic find. And while we are on the topic of Slayers, they didn't even mention how they will change Slayer drop rates or drop calculations in order to compensate for the magic find revamp. You see, magic find works way differently on Slayers than on any other regular mob. While on regular mobs, magic find increases your drop rates by a linear amount, on Slayers the more magic find you have, the less effective each point of magic find becomes, or in other words, magic find has diminishing returns on Slayers. This is due to the fact that Magic Find on Slayers simply increases the weight of all the drops, so while each individual item has a higher weight, there's also a much bigger weight pool to draw an item from. This means while 100 Magic Find doubles your drop rate for something like Chimera, it only increases your chance for a Judgment Call by about 73% of its base drop rate. This discrepancy becomes bigger the more Magic Find you have. In addition, being item locked isn't even that big of an issue. If you think about it, in dungeons, you're technically locked to the typical setup of Diamond Head, Skelly Master Chestplate, Necron Leggings and Maxer Boots, or Storm Armor if you're a mage. See, once a certain item is best in slot for a certain purpose, whatever it is, people will use that over anything and everything else for the thing it's best in slot at. The only way to prevent that is to make multiple, equally good meta options. But even then, the only variety you'd see is between the few items that are meta. Anyway, even then, some sources of Magic Find you'd want to use anyway. Take the Golden Dragon, for example. For combat, it's the best in slot pet. So, you're using it anyway when doing combat, yet you still get Magic Find. I think it's hard to argue that you are pet locked when you're pet locked to the best pet in the game, but that's also just my opinion. Or Magic Find enrichments. While you could get like minimal amounts of extra utility or damage out of your enrichments, Magic Find is more worth it in most cases, since the extra utility other enrichments can provide is very minimal in comparison. And removing the so-called sources of Magic Find that make you item locked to a certain item just makes it so instead you're gonna be using other metagear, effectively item locking you into said metagear instead. Looting is also now pretty much dead following these changes. The small amount of Magic Find does not compensate the insane boost it currently gives to drop rates at all. The only positive of this change is that now, at least, it's not gonna be extremely confusing or debatable when it works and when it doesn't, as that is currently very unclear and everyone seems to disagree on when it does work and when it doesn't. Speaking of items that get absolutely gutted by this update, Chimera, Hephaestus and Minus Relics, and the Dragon Horn. Chimera copies a percentage of your pet's base stats depending on the Chimera level. This was used alongside a Golden Dragon pet to get a boatload of Magic Find, which made it a very sought after enchantment for everyone looking to make extra money doing whatever Magic Find related activity. But with pets getting their base Magic Find taken away, its only purpose that remains is to increase your damage. So realistically, it's only going to be put on Ragaxes, Claymores and Hyperions for RCM. Hephaestus and Minus Relics suffer an even worse fate. Without any base Magic Find to increase, they do nothing, and they're not even good for damage, as Remedies is a way better pet item for that purpose on Golden Dragon anyway. Dragon Horn is also used exclusively for Magic Find, as it gives plus 1% Magic Find per piece of armor you put it on. Well, all stats, but yeah. Though, if they remove it, it's gonna become useless, as the Ancient Reforge is far superior as a damage Reforge. It's cheaper and also probably easier to obtain in bulk for the average Iron Man player. This new proposal of a system also really trivializes Magic Find as a whole. This kind of goes hand in hand with the fact they want to remove Magic Find swaps. But basically what I'm saying is, doing sweaty strats for extra Magic Find should be encouraged if the player wishes to do so. If the player is dedicated enough to get a 15 kill combo for 6% more Magic Find on his Inquisitor, let him do it. If the player wants to swap to Tarantula Pet and kill a few mobs around his Inquisitor for a little bit of extra Magic Find, let him do it. He chooses to put in the effort for the minimum buffs, which is exactly what makes the game more engaging and gives it its skill ceiling and Magic Find its identity. Without any niche strats to optimize Magic Find, the stat becomes just as boring and flat as something like Strength, and that's not what Magic Find is supposed to be. Also, it really seems to me like they absolutely hate percentual Magic Find sources. Like, they made every single percentual Magic Find source, besides Jerry, a flat source now. And maybe Clover Helmet, but they said that they themselves don't know what to do with it. Rest in peace, Clover Helmet, though I hope it doesn't get absolutely nurtured. And now, last, but certainly not least. No more big funny number magic find, no! To summarize, the proposal of this update as it is in its current state is absolutely terrible. Though, credit where credit is due, it's good that they are at least attempting to communicate with the community and the communion on their computers in order to solve communism, my comrades. Jokes aside though, I think that at least trying to reach the community and listen to their feedback is a step in the right direction. Their update philosophy isn't, however. I feel like a lot of the more recent updates are very catered towards earlier gameplayers to make their experience better, while screwing the loyal endgame player base over. If they keep on neglecting said loyal player base, eventually it will be at the game's peril. Yes, new players will be joining, but after a while they will leave too, as if there is no incentive to grind anymore, there's also no reason to play at all anymore. All the while, the endgame players being screwed over by the updates lose motivation to play and just quit because the admins don't fulfill their wishes. Stupid admins should just press Q as heal, but with the way they are currently designing updates, they really are unintentionally slowly killing their game in the long term. If you've made it this far, please consider leaving a like and perhaps even subscribing if you enjoy the content. It means a lot to me. I spent so much and got so far, but in the end it doesn't even matter.